The birth of Japan's paratroopers, 1939 to 1941. When Germany launched lightning invasions across Europe, one tactic captured Japan's attention: the German Fallschirmjäger, elite paratroopers who seized airfields and fortresses with breathtaking speed. Tokyo's military observers studied these operations closely. They saw how airborne troops in Holland and Crete changed modern warfare, small units achieving huge results. By late 1940, the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy both began forming their own airborne forces. The Army created the Teishin Shudan, or raiding group, commanded by Major General Kyoji Tominaga. The Navy established the Yokosuka 3rd Special Naval Landing Force, trained for parachute drops over islands and coastal installations. Training took place in secrecy. Recruits were selected from the most disciplined infantry and Marines. They practiced with modified aircraft like the Mitsubishi Ki-57 and Nakajima L, 2D transports, Japanese versions of the Douglas DC-3. Parachutes were rudimentary. Many failed to open correctly. Early exercises were fatal, yet volunteers kept coming, proud to be called the men who fall from heaven. By December 1941, as Japan prepared to unleash its empire across Southeast Asia, the Teishin and Yokosuka units were ready for combat. Their first real test would come in the islands of the Dutch East Indies, a place called Manado. The Manado operation, Celebes, January 1942. Sound: distant waves crash. Tropical winds blow. Then aircraft engines roar. Narrator: combat tense. January 11th, 1942. Over the turquoise waters of the Celebes Sea, the Imperial Japanese Navy prepared for one of the boldest operations of the Pacific War. Their target, the island of Celebes, today known as Sulawesi, and its vital town of Manado. Cut to archival footage: Japanese transports flying low over jungles. The Netherlands East Indies were rich in oil and minerals, resources. Japan desperately needed to fuel its war machine. Manado, with its Langoan airfield and Kaka seaplane base, was a perfect forward base for attacks on Borneo, Ambon, and Timor. To seize it swiftly, Japan would use a new weapon: airborne assault. At dawn, 334 paratroopers of the Yokosuka 1st Special Naval Landing Force boarded 30 transport planes. These were Japan's first ever combat paratroop drop, history in the making. Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Toyoaki Horiuchi, briefed his men one last time. Once on the ground, capture the airfield at all costs. Remember, the Emperor watches over you from the skies. Sound: whistling wind, engines humming. As the planes approached Manado, anti-aircraft fire burst from Dutch defenses below. The paratroopers jumped, green canopies blossoming against the morning sun. Some were hit mid-air. Others drifted off course into swamps and rivers. But the majority landed close to their target, and within minutes, fierce fighting erupted. Gunfire and explosions fade in. The Dutch garrison, consisting of KNIL, Royal Netherlands East Indies Army, troops and local militia, fought bravely but were overwhelmed. Japanese paratroopers attacked with submachine guns, grenades, and even flamethrowers. They swiftly seized the Langoan airfield and neutralized resistance at the Kaka's seaplane base. Narrator: it was a stunning success. Within hours, Japan had captured its first major airfield by parachute assault. The Empire of the Rising Sun had proven that it could strike from the sky. By evening, reinforcements from Japanese naval units landed on the beaches and joined the paratroopers. Together they secured Manado, opening the door to further expansion across the Dutch East Indies. But the victory came at a cost. Nearly 70 paratroopers were killed. Many shot before they could even free themselves from their harnesses. Still, Tokyo celebrated the news as a triumph of modern warfare. Newspapers called it the fall from heaven at Manado. Narrator: somber tone. For the men who survived, it was glory earned through fire. For Japan, it was proof that their new airborne arm could strike terror across the Pacific. Yet the generals in Tokyo wanted more, a grander spectacle, a massive airborne strike that would shock the Allies. And their next target lay deep in Sumatra, the beating heart of the Dutch oil empire. Music builds, drums and brass. Palembang, on the island of Sumatra, was home to the richest oil fields in Southeast Asia. Two massive refineries, Plajo and Sungai, Jurong, supplied much of the fuel for the Allies in the Pacific. If Japan could seize them intact, its war machine would run on captured oil instead of imported fuel. In February 1942, the Imperial Japanese Army's 1st raiding group, the Teishin Shudan, took to the skies. Over 600 paratroopers, led by Major General Kyoji Tominaga, boarded aircraft at airfields in southern Thailand and Malaya. Their mission: seize the oil refineries and the nearby airfields before Allied demolition teams could destroy them. Sound, engines hum, troops pray quietly. At dawn on February 14th, Japanese planes roared toward Palembang. Anti-aircraft guns from Dutch and British positions opened fire. Despite the chaos, waves of paratroopers leapt into the smoke-filled skies. Japan's largest airborne assault of the war. Narrator, building tension. They fell through anti-aircraft bursts, through heat and wind, through the sight of burning oil tanks below them. Some never made it to the ground alive. Those who did land found themselves scattered across plantations, swamps and canals. Many paratroopers were isolated, yet they fought with astonishing ferocity. By midday, several groups stormed Plejo refinery, throwing grenades into bunkers and using captured trucks to advance. Gunfire, shouting, explosions. The Allied defenders, a mix of Dutch KNL soldiers, British troops and local volunteers, resisted stubbornly, determined to prevent the refineries from falling intact. But Japanese reinforcements dropped from the second wave, pushed them back. By evening, the refineries were under Japanese control. The Dutch had managed to set fire to some tanks, but much of the equipment was intact. Within days, engineers restarted oil production, now flowing straight to Japan's Navy and Army. It was a major victory, but again a costly one. Around 200 Japanese paratroopers were killed or wounded. Narrator, reflective. The capture of Palembang marked the high point of Japan's airborne power. Never again would its paratroopers achieve such a swift, strategic success. Yet even as Tokyo celebrated, a darker truth emerged. Japan's reach was growing too fast. The empire was expanding in every direction, and soon its paratroopers would be thrown into operations far beyond their limits. Their next mission would take them to the rugged island of Timor and a place called Koepang. Koepang in the Battle for Timor, February 1942. Sound, heavy rain, thunder, jungle noises. Narrator: the island of Timor lay at the edge of the Dutch East Indies, a gateway between Asia and Australia. To the Japanese High Command, it was the next stepping stone toward controlling the entire Pacific Front. In February 1942, the Imperial Japanese Army launched Operation L, aimed at capturing Koepang, the main port and airfield on Timor. The defenders, Dutch, British, and Australian troops, were dug in and prepared for a fight. Japan decided to use both airborne and amphibious forces to strike simultaneously. Once again, the Teishin Shudan was called upon. Hundreds of paratroopers boarded transport planes at Kendari and Ambon. Their target, Penfui Airfield, near Koepang. Narrator, intense tone. On February 20th, under heavy cloud and crosswinds, the transports appeared over the island. Below them, the Allied troops were ready. The Japanese had no idea they were flying straight into a storm of bullets. Anti-aircraft guns opened up immediately. Several Japanese planes were hit and exploded mid-air. Still, the first paratroopers jumped, their parachutes shredded by gunfire before they even reached the ground. Those who survived landed amidst Australian trenches and machine gun nests. Sound, chaotic gunfire, shouting, storm winds. The battle turned into a massacre, cut off from reinforcements. Small groups of Japanese paratroopers fought desperately in the jungle and hills for 3 days. They destroyed some enemy positions but suffered devastating losses. Out of several hundred who jumped, less than half survived. Narrator, somberly: the operation at Koepang was meant to repeat the glory of Palembang. Instead, it became a lesson in overconfidence. The Empire's airborne wings had flown too far. Even though Japan eventually captured Timor through ground invasion, the paratroop assault at Koepang was a disaster. Many Teishin veterans called it the island of no return. Still, Tokyo refused to give up on its elite airborne forces. By 1943, as the war tide began to turn against Japan, military planners started viewing their paratroopers not as shock troops of expansion, but as suicide commandos for desperate defense. Their next missions would come not in victory, but in desperation, across the skies of the Philippines and Okinawa. After the disasters in New Guinea and the Marianas, the Philippines became the next major battleground. In October 1944, General Douglas MacArthur returned to the islands, fulfilling his famous promise, "I shall return." As U.S. forces landed at Leyte Gulf, Japan's Imperial Army grew desperate to stop them. Outnumbered and outgunned, the High Command revived its paratroopers for one last gamble. Operation T. The plan was simple and suicidal. A select group from the 2nd Raiding Brigade would parachute into Burauen, behind enemy lines, seize American airfields, destroy their planes, and cause chaos long enough for Japanese ground forces to regroup. Sound, wind rushing, engines humming. On the night of December 6, 1944, about 400 Teishin Shudan paratroopers took off from Luzon. Their transports flew low, dodging American radar, but the U.S. anti-aircraft defenses were ready. Searchlights cut through the night. Tracer rounds lit up the sky. Narrator, tense tone. They jumped into darkness and fire. Many were hit before their parachutes opened. Others landed directly among American camps, where bewildered soldiers woke up to grenades exploding beside them. What followed was chaos. Japanese paratroopers attacked supply dumps, burned fuel depots, and slashed through tents with bayonets. Some even captured a few planes and tried to take off, only to be shot down immediately. For nearly 2 days, the fighting raged across the Burauen airfields. American units, stunned by the audacity of the attack, regrouped quickly and surrounded the scattered Japanese raiders. By the end of December 7th, almost all 400 paratroopers had been killed. Narrator, somber. It was courage without hope, heroism without victory. The skies of Leyte became their graves. Though Operation T failed to halt the American advance, it left a deep impression on Allied troops. For the first time, U.S. soldiers in the Pacific had faced a Japanese airborne attack, and they never forgot the sight of enemy parachutes descending in the moonlight. For Japan, it was a symbol of defiance, proof that even in defeat, its warriors could still strike from above. But as 1945 dawned, the empire was cornered. Its cities were burning, its navy destroyed, and yet one last paratroop operation was planned. A final act of desperation over Okinawa. The final gamble, Okinawa, 1945. Sound, ocean waves, distant artillery, kamikaze dive sounds. Narrator. April 1945. The island of Okinawa, the gateway to Japan itself. The largest amphibious invasion of the Pacific War had begun. Hundreds of thousands of American troops stormed the beaches. The Imperial Japanese Army prepared for a fight to the death. By now, Japan's paratroop forces had been decimated. Yet the Geretsu Kutetai, an elite special attack paratroop unit, was formed, not to seize territory, but to destroy American air power. Their mission, to launch a nighttime suicide raid on Allied air bases in Okinawa, targeting the massive fleet of B-29 bombers and transport, aircraft that threatened Japan's homeland. Narrator, quiet intensity. These men trained knowing they would never return. They were not ordinary paratroopers. They were kamikaze soldiers of the sky. On the night of May 24, 1945, 10 transport planes took off from Kyushu carrying 136 Geretsu commandos. Flying low over the ocean, they approached Okinawa's Yontan and Kadena airfields, but U.S. radar detected them early. Searchlights illuminated the night sky. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire. Most of the planes were hit before reaching the target. Only one managed to crash land near Yontan airfield. Out of the wreckage, a handful of Japanese commandos emerged, charging straight into the heart of the base. Sound, sirens, machine guns, shouting fire. They threw grenades into hangars, set aircraft ablaze, and destroyed fuel depots. American guards responded immediately, unleashing overwhelming firepower. By morning, all the attackers were dead, but they had managed to destroy or damage 43 American aircraft. Okinawa was the final battleground. Within months, Japan would surrender after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And with that surrender, the era of the Imperial paratroopers came to an end. Distant echoes of warplanes fading away. Narrator, calm, reflective voice. When the guns finally fell silent in August 1945, Japan's paratroopers vanished into history. Their legacy was one of daring courage and haunting loss. Men who believed that victory could be found in the clouds, and honor in the fall from heaven. Pause. Music swells softly. From the jungles of Manado to the oil fires of Palembang, from the desperate skies over Leyte to the flames of Okinawa, these airborne soldiers of the empire had lived, fought and died for a dream that could not endure. Sound fades, wind and distant planes pass overhead. Narrator, final line. They were Japan's fallen angels of war, and their story reminds us that even in the darkest moments of history, courage can soar and fall from the sky. Music fades out. Title reappears on screen. Japanese paratroop operations in WWII, the men who fell from heaven.